Good to see you all again.
Oh, and nice to be seen.
Indeed. Episode 2 of the Sewing Bee Summer Week.
And it's warming up, so just in time.
Yeah.
Isn't it just? Now, was it me, or was this episode just a bit dull, or a bit slow? I can't.
Hang on, I thought I'm the controversial one here.
I've been mulling about it all day, and I couldn't quite work out. It just seemed to lack something, and I can't quite put my tongue on it.
Well, I'd put a finger on it for a start. I wouldn't try licking things. But I texted you last night during the programme, and I felt that I'm not a lover of the challenge in the middle, but I feel that should be more frenetic, and it didn't even feel frenetic. It was kind of like just sailing along, and I was like, hang on a minute, I want a bit of danger here.
I wonder though, is it because there's still lots of people in? Because I'm sure we've had a very similar conversation last season to be like, God, it's still a bit slow. When is it going to get started?
Yeah.
And then as we got more time with more individuals.
Yeah, and this week I know they introduced everyone last week, but then we had a couple of the extended clips, didn't we, of like, he lives with his partner, or, they go out running and stuff like this. So that kind of, it's nice to know that information, but it then took time away from the sewing when you've got to get round 11 sewers.
Yeah, that's what I felt. Because they've got to get round 11 sewers, they didn't have time to perhaps find a story in that transformation challenge and edit it. Or is it because they're actually all quite good, competent sewers?
Oh, come on, let's not go too far.
No, because there was definitely some moments this week where it was like, oh, I'm worried about you.
And I'm sorry, the the paper bag shorts, that proved that we did not have a room full of good sewers.
Well, there we are. Let's move on to our first challenge then, the pattern challenge, which was the paper bag shorts. Never heard of them, but then I'm not a big fashion person. Had you two heard of them before?
Well, I don't think you'd be able to pull off a pair of paper bag shorts, to be honest.
I don't think you'd be able to pull off a bag either, but that's a different story. No, I think paper bags, I would have heard of them. I think they're maybe female only fashion. I may be very wrong with that. Okay. But I'm sure blokes could wear them as well. They look very similar to, I've seen men wearing similar shorts, but they might be called something slightly different, possibly.
So, Tegan, have you got anything there that the judges were looking for? I've got some notes written down. So it was the idea of the elasticated waist, which they emphasised, the turn up and the pocket. So I suppose,
and the nice acute angle on the side that was done inside out. And you have experience of turning things inside out, don't you?
Oh my word! Yes, one of our first tutorials and only tutorial.
It wasn't even a tutorial in the end.
It was to make. For an apron, it was to make that said long piece of strip and making it inside out. And we'd had a tip on how to easily do that turnout and to pull it right way out. Well, several takes of doing that tip wasn't so much of a tip. So I felt for them there. So that was clearly something to focus on. So those 4 things then. So let's go straight in. What was our first sort of impressions of that round?
Well, I've written down here, what on earth happened? Because I wasn't paying attention. Again, we were dealing with these little offcuts of people's lives and everything like that. And then when it came to the judging, and I know we want to discuss the individual ones, but it came to the judging, and I don't know whether I missed something, and I know we'll get lots of things in the comments that I probably did miss something, but it seemed to me that Raf was the only one who got it correct. Yeah. Everyone else had something wrong.
Well, this is it.
Was that wrong?
Everybody had something wrong. At least half of them had done, or not at least, but definitely about half of them had done the fold the wrong way.
Yeah.
And if Raf only got away with it because he knew he did it the wrong way and went and fixed it. So he also was. I
think he had folded it, but he hadn't sewn it. I think he had time where the others had actually sewn it all and then realised that it was.
But there was some serious foreshadowing going on when you're talking about the fold, because there was also mention of making sure you line up the notches.
Yeah.
And we definitely had some interesting pockets.
Yeah.
You know, so I think, was it Jean? Hers were actually sewn up in the waistband, so the pocket.
Jean's pocket came up to here.
Yeah. Really high-waisted. So there was that sort of carry on, and there was some pockets round the wrong way.
Yeah.
Dina, I think, had her pockets go in 2 different directions. Yeah, I wrote down basically most people got the turn-up wrong, or there was something wrong with the waistband where they didn't stitch in that channel, or they didn't match up the pockets right, so they weren't quite in the right. Or, you know, when they were stitching up the panel, the top part of the pocket wasn't picked up. So,
I mean, obviously these are designed to have lots of, you know, it's not just 2 bits of material slapped together. You know, they're designed to have these skills, and, you know, to try and catch the pocket and the turn and the elastic and the back of the shorts, you know, that is what they're ultimately trying to see if you can do, because otherwise it's just, you know, a couple of legs sewn together. But then equally, that's what you then spend your time making sure that you can do. And you know, we had the whole thing with Damien again about reading the instructions, and
that brings me nicely on to my next point. I was going to ask you, do you think that's a production point of view, to give them vague instructions so they got the turn-ups wrong? Was it so vague it was the way they read it, or did they just not read them?
You knew this as teachers. You were always told to read the whole thing. Make sure you go through.
Hang on a minute. When you last followed a pattern, Mr. Race, how far ahead did you read in your pattern?
I only read the instruction I'm on. So I read instruction 1 and do it. Then I read instruction 2 and do it.
Then you throw it across the room.
Technically, you're supposed to read it the whole way through, so you have an idea. So it's going to be one of those where you're supposed to read the whole. I've done it myself, where I've been like, oh, I have to unpick that because I didn't do it right.
For so many of them to do the turn up wrong, was it written so vaguely it could be interpreted in any way?
I don't think it was probably. I mean, if it was vague, I don't know if it would be deliberately vague. I mean, because it was one of the skills they wanted them to do. But I think the flip side of it is actually, we don't live in a turn-up era. I remember, you know, when I went to school in the 90s, that every pair of trousers had a turn-up on, and you know, my mum would swear about having to turn my trousers up. And then put the turn back into it, and you know, whereas these days there's not many, or there certainly hasn't been, turns up. So I suppose it's one of those things where you probably would not have made it in something that you were doing for a while, and also they wanted it done a certain way so that it was concealed. There are different ways of doing turn-ups, and again, that might not be the way that you're used to doing it.
Yeah, and that's why I think the instructions may have been vague, so you could have perhaps done it one way or a different way, which I think Damien did, didn't he? He did do it a different way.
No, he didn't read the instructions. He admitted that, didn't he?
Well, he said he read them, but he didn't necessarily. I wonder if because I have the same problem sometimes. You read something and it doesn't just quite digest the right way, or you only pick up the key points sometimes, and you have to read it like 3 or 4 times, and then you're like, oh, that makes sense. I wonder if it's something like that with him, because he did his top stitching that was visible, and they were like, oh, you seem to have top stitched that.
You're being very generous.
And he's really pleased with himself because he used his contrasting thread as well, and I was like, oh, God love you.
I think you're being very generous. I mean, we don't know that much about Damien, but you know, last week he was all about, I want to get on the machine, I want to get it done, I'm going to get it out. I think he is like a winger. Let's pick it up and get it done. And I think he probably glanced at it and saw, you got to turn it up and sew it. And then without probably, like you say, rereading it again, has just gone all the way around and it's done. I think he just needs to take a breath between each instruction.
Yeah, and I'm hoping that'll happen, though. I'm hoping he'll eventually, like by next week, he'll be like, okay, I need to just read this like 4 times just to make sure.
Yeah, if you look at what happened last week and then compare it to this week, he's come along in leaps and bounds. So there is an element of, you know, I did wonder whether this week it was going to be, well, he dodged a bullet last week, he's going home this week, but he made a problem with that turn up, but the rest of his shorts were well done. The channel and everything.
I have to say, he is my one to watch. I actually think he's my favourite.
Interest. Well, let's be fair. He's definitely got a lot of potential, I reckon. He does have potential.
So, ones that stood out then that you liked in that round? Did any jump out? I mean, look, what about Raf, for example? I mean,
I loved Raf. He'd taken the time to match the pattern as well. Because when I first saw that fabric, I was like, you have given yourself a massive job here. But he managed to match that pattern. And like I said, he was the only one who seemed to do everything correct.
The placement of the pattern.
I will give a shout out. I did like Adam's fabric.
Yes.
Yeah.
It wasn't completed very well, but I loved the fabric that he used. And
Jean's, what about Jean's fabric? I know she had as you explained, Anya, she had a pocket problem, but that nautical sort of summery feel was lovely, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was lovely.
They had some good fabrics to choose from.
I liked Lorato's as well. I'm probably saying her name wrong. It was kind of like a denim sort of wash, and I thought that was quite nice. And if she'd done it right, it'd be nice, really chic with a nice white shirt and some sandals. It would be lush. But
I think the other thing I made a note of, and I might have this wrong, I can't remember. I'm pretty sure it was one of the orange ones, but there were two, I think we've established. And I think Andrew's was the one where the fabric was too thick. And that worried me slightly for the future for someone like him, because, we've talked about using the right weight of fabric. And, I know there's that frenetic moment that you're in the haberdashery and you've got to use what's in front of you. But, with something like they were shown and everything, yeah, you want to choose a nice colour, but it's got to be the right weight. Because he struggled to pull his thing through because the fabric was too thick to get the lovely point and everything like that. And I would imagine that to go out on a summer's day with what seemed like quite thick fabric, to wear those shorts might not have been as comfortable than the lovely colour that they looked.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah.
And so I worry that in the future he might be a relatively good sewer, but if he's not choosing the right weights, then you get to something bigger and it's not going to drape or hang or properly, and that could be what does kind of does it in for him.
I feel like this is some sort of foreshadowing going on by Ting.
What about the young ones?
Crystal ball.
Serena, who played blind the last episode being in the top. She struggled with the instructions as well, didn't she, with the turn up?
Yeah, but I think they all sort of, herself, Serena, and Raf, and somebody else that I've forgotten.
What, struggling with? Yeah,
I think the three of them, between them, figured out that their turn up had been done wrong. Yeah. I do think though that Serena had good pattern matching with hers as well. She did well with her pattern matching, if I remember correctly.
She did nice fabric, that blue fabric with the flowers on, didn't she?
Yeah. So she did well with hers, aside from the turn-up. And
that belt, as you were talking about, Ting, is hard, isn't it? To turn that out, get it right, and get a lovely crisp point.
Yes.
It's hard.
Yes.
And many of them struggled with that, even like Adam. So
all I can remember is the secondary tip that you had, which was to lick the tip.
That's it. I'll put the link in the description, and you can have a laugh at our expense, because you can hear Ting in the background absolutely wetting himself with laughter. So the standings for that round: Raf first, Serena second.
Yeah, that's fair.
I think that was right, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, like I said, Raf was the only one that seemed to do it right. Everyone else had something wrong.
Andrew third, Catherine fourth, Farry fifth. Damien sixth, Rebecca seventh, Adam was that eighth, Adina ninth, Loratu 10th, and then Jean. Oh, sad.
Yeah, Jean. But that's the way of it. These things.
Yes. What did you think of Joe during that sequence? I found him really funny.
Well, he is really funny.
He is funny. He's funny throughout.
It was the drink when he pulled out the bottle and it said Esme Young revitally. I actually chuckled out loud, and I'm not one for laughing out loud.
Well,
I know a lot of people who comment below, sometimes they're not too sure on Joe and that humour, because it is 9 o'clock It is a little bit.
I sometimes wonder if it's why we are now at 9 o'clock.
Yeah. Oh, well, no, to be fair, do you know what it is? Different strokes for different folks. Yeah. Everybody's going to like somebody different to, you know, we know for ourselves, talking among each other, me and Ting don't necessarily always agree on who we like on the program.
Good. And that causes debate and discussion. That's what we want. And talking about debate and discussion, there's going to be loads of it in this one. It's the transformation challenge, which we all loathe.
Well, I don't know. I don't loathe it. I find it entirely ridiculous and funny to watch, so I don't mind it.
Well, I think the point I tried to make last night was, I mean, like I said, I think it's a pointless thing because it's not the sort of thing you do. You don't get up one day and go, oh, it's not, I've got 90 minutes. I'm going to run up a dress out of 5 board shorts. It's not the sort of thing that happens in real life.
You know what, Ting? I think we need to get you to do that for the crack.
But I think, like I said last night, all of the edge had gone off it because they do only have 90 minutes. So they normally edit it together. It's like, oh my God, I'm going to pull it. Oh, I'm using this off the haberdashery. I'm going to put tassels over everything. And there was nothing like that. Yeah. And I don't know if it's because they gave them too many. I mean, they had quite a lot of fabric there. They could do a lot. Normally, you're scrabbing around trying to think, what am I going to do with this? Like, I think you're right. Fabric. It
was too much because they gave them then the addition of the trunks as well, didn't they?
Yeah. Yeah, they give them like extra swimwear or whatever it was.
Yeah, I think you're right, Ting. There, yeah, very much so. But there were some wonderful creations, I think, weren't there?
There were some woeful creations as well, I have to say. But there were some I was surprised. I was like, oh, that's actually pretty good. I'm impressed. Yeah.
Considering, as you say, you've only got 90 minutes, and we've had that debate that sometimes that some sewers are, you know, they're methodical. They like to follow a pattern, and some can just create like that.
And I think what was interesting is that Adam won the challenge, and you know, last week he only came second because he decided to put that stupid extra thing on, but actually they loved the shape and everything of what he'd done. And I think, you know, as while I hate it, he's obviously got a skill of being able to take you know, some random items and design something. I mean, yeah, okay, it's always going to be rough and ready because they all are. It's 90 minutes, but he thinks about it, and he seems to be able to think off the cuff like that, and produce something really good. And I think that's how. Don't get me wrong, I don't want him to leave, but I think that's what's helping keep his place because he's showing in that challenge that he's really good at taking something out of nothing.
But I wonder. I was thinking about this afterwards. So he's done 2 dresses week on week. And his job on the cruise ships is working with entertainment. And if you've seen the picture of him, he's with this beautiful row of women in fancy dressed up.
They were also...
I wonder is that he's got a catalogue of knowledge of these beautiful items of clothing. How he spends
probably, but they were also instructed to make 2 dresses, weren't they? They were supposed to.
Yeah, but that's what I mean. It's like is that playing to his strengths? So that's like, I wonder if next week they're like, do this dog cover thing.
Oh, they never do that again.
No, but you know what I mean? If they do something completely off kilter with that, it'd be like, I wonder, would we see maybe it's not to his strength that way, possibly.
So for viewers, just make sure that we're clear with what it was to make a women's summer evening dress, wasn't it? Because some, I don't think, were dresses.
A garment. It didn't say a dress. It said a garment for a woman on a summer evening. I wrote that one down.
Right. Well done. Thank you for clarifying that. And they had to use board shorts and the addition of men's swimwear.
Yeah. Speedos ahoy.
Yeah, which I thought was funny after having shorts in the first round, then have shorts in the second round again. I thought
they didn't end up as shorts. That was the
thing.
No. Yeah.
So what do we think of Jean's attempt on that one?
Well, right. To be fair, I quite like the look of jeans. You know, I was like, oh, that's quite funky, nice backward top. But then if you even lifted your elbows slightly, you would be flashing everybody around you. You know what I mean? So it's like, that's maybe not appropriate. But I kind of like the shape of it. But
I just wrote down, similar to the first task, I just wrote down here what on earth was going on.
Yeah.
Because even in the construction of it, she had this kind of cape thing.
Red Riding Hood cape.
Pinned some to the front. Then she sewed it all together so that when you lifted your arms up, the whole world was your gynecologist. And
you know, as long as you have a good swimsuit underneath, maybe that's what she was going for. You know, when you're out in Ibiza or something.
If I had a good swimsuit on underneath, I'd have just taken that top off and thrown it in the bin.
What about Farry's sort of blue and yellow top piece?
Oh yes, the party dress. She was aiming for somebody out on a night, like on a clubbing night. That would have played well on like maybe sort of like a rave sort of style night.
Oh,
you know, it makes me think of all the neon clothes and all that.
Be out in Ibiza.
Yeah.
Is that where the youngsters still go these days?
I honestly don't know anymore.
Well, not at the moment with COVID.
No, obviously.
I thought they did their colour choices well. You look at Serena.
Some of them did,
that green and the blue and the flamingo fabric of Rebecca.
Yeah, I like Serena's. I liked hers lots actually. I really liked the way that looked.
And I can't think who it was now. Was it Larassa who had the red thing? I've just called it the red thing.
Drape.
Red stroke yellow.
Weird drape.
Yes, sort of a blend of colours.
She'd obviously managed to get, I can't remember how many items they have, 3 or 4 board shorts, whatever. She'd obviously managed to get a great colour palette, and then it was just like, what have you done?
Yeah. Because she even talked about the fact that she had a colour story going on.
Yeah.
I didn't, when I seen the end result, I was like, I kind of missed what happened there. So, yeah, I wasn't.
But coming back to Adam, that top, how he'd split them and then re-sewn them back, sort of wonky, that did look good. It was striking, wasn't it?
Yeah, the halter dress. Yeah, it was really nice. Yeah, I thought it was lovely. I personally preferred Serena's over his, but his was also very good. So now, I also quite liked Catherine. She did a top as well. And I liked it. I even wrote down, liked it.
Yeah, I was just about to say, she sort of got pushed to the side. It was sort of, or not really focused on much. It was nice browny blue colours, wasn't it, Catherine's?
Yeah, I quite like that. So I was like, that would be nice with a pair of linen trousers. This is what happens in my head. I see clothes and I'm like, I would put that with that and it would be fabulous. But I actually quite liked her top. I thought it was nice to have something other than another dress. So
let's talk about Raf, as he won the first one, did so well last week. Was he going to do really well with that sort of Hawaiian look?
I wrote down, it looked like a rocket. And Esme was, it looked like a rocket. It did. It had that big triangle at the bottom.
I wonder what his thinking processes were there.
I wonder if it was a case of like, I'm doing this in here, and then you put it on the model and go, it looks like a rocket, but I've got 5 minutes left. What am I going to do?
Yeah, because maybe it was meant to drape or be like a puffball or something.
I think it was probably supposed to do something different, and then it got onto the model, the model, and it was just like, I don't know what I'm going to do about that. I'll have to leave it.
Yeah, and it did make me chuckle. It's like, Esme loved it, Patrick wasn't a fan. And I was, it looked like fancy dress, you know, that it actually looked like fancy dress rather than an evening dress.
I mean, it is, as I said, it is a hard challenge. If you're used to following patterns, to suddenly have this hour and a half, what is it? Yeah, an hour and a half of being creative. I'd struggle with that.
I think it will depend on your experience, because the flip side is, if you're used to working with patterns, okay, you haven't got the paper pieces to lay out and cut. But if you're used to cutting up lots and sewing things together, using that, if you've split up all the shorts and lay them all down, you can probably pull it back together. Equally, if you've not been sewing for very long, you can probably, a bit like Adam, is look at it and go, actually, if I drape it here, there and everywhere. And I think the people who are disadvantaged are probably the people who have been sewing a little bit longer than the novices, but not as long as the experienced people. And then they're kind of in there and they're like, I don't know if I've got the confidence to drape like Adam, but I haven't got the knowledge to see a pattern piece in my mind without it being pinned in, which maybe the more experienced can.
Yeah, quite possibly. Yeah. But I kind of expected with Raf to have, because I'm aware he doesn't necessarily create the costumes or that sort of stuff, but he does work with.
I think what's coming very clear with Raf, and I think you were pushing me last week, and I was being very nonchalant about it, but I'm growing to like him, and mind you, that's probably the kiss of death. But he said he doesn't make clothes, but he's a textile student, and I think if you look at the patterns and the colours he chooses, that is where he is spot on. And I think that comes from his work.
Yeah.
As working just with fabric and colour and things like that. And I think he's choosing the right fabrics, the right weights, the right colours to bring it all together. And that is a skill in itself.
Yeah.
And we can come back to that in his made to measure piece, because that's, that the dyeing again came up there. So the standings for that round, Adam came first and Serena second again. So that they're both up there, aren't they?
Yeah, well, good sewers.
Adina third, and then we've got the rest going through there. Who's that? Catherine, Rebecca, Damien, then Raf seventh, Fari eighth, Jean 9, Andrew 10th, and Loratu at the bottom there. So I think at that point did you then text meeting and say, Jean's in trouble?
Yeah.
I wrote down worried about Jean. Bless her.
So made to measure, their task was to make a button down summer dress.
And that there was definite foreshadowing there going on, where they're just talking about that Patrick and Esme, that they needed to make sure they left themselves enough time to actually do the buttons. And that was like, oh, people are going to go wrong here, aren't they?
Yeah. Well, they were going to focus on that.
Yes, but at the same time, there was only a couple of people who didn't get all of the buttons on. I think, people had realised that they have got to allow that amount of time to do the buttons and the buttonholes. As I said, it wasn't like everyone had a button problem. So, they had obviously thought about it.
Was it Jean as well that she was wearing a dress or a top that she'd made herself with buttons on it?
No, Catherine.
No, Catherine.
Okay.
Yeah. Which was then a bit of a shame during that challenge, because she kind of struggled, didn't she?
Yeah, that was it. Because I wrote down one of them didn't get their buttons finished, that had.
But then I think this goes back again. I mean, I haven't been on the thing, because it comes up at the end saying, oh, see how we made this COVID secure. And, we were saying that this has probably been filmed back to back as opposed to weekend from weekend. But they do know what that last challenge is, because they go out and choose the pattern and the fabric and everything that they want. Forget about trying to fit it to a model, but they do have that opportunity to do those sorts of things. And, with Catherine, she chose that key print that she wanted to pattern match. But then if you look at someone like Adam, who then just went with a polka dot, he didn't have to worry about pattern matching. And then he fumbled over the buttons and choosing which ones, but he got his done because it was that thing of like, you might want to show off that you can pattern match, but actually putting 15 buttons straight line down the front of a dress is what they're looking for. So choose a fabric where you don't have to pattern match.
Yeah, or don't worry about the pattern, because even Patrick or Esme at the very start with Catherine were like, maybe focus on the buttons instead, or don't really worry about it. The
print was so small. You're right, Anya. The print was so small, there was no point pattern matching it, was there?
Absolutely. And Patrick said that to her at the end. It was like, maybe if you'd spent the time not worrying about the pattern matching, you would have got finished. So
it's an interesting point though you make. They know the show, they know the made to measure. Don't make it harder for yourself by the choice of fabric.
I know, but you're on TV and you've got that pressure and you want to
you want to stand out and you want to show your skills off. But I think, and of course, the stuff where they film, oh, well, it's really important they do 15 buttons, blah, 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 blah. But, they don't know that, when they're going into that challenge. But there is that thing of like, well, even though you may have been in a COVID secure bubble, you must have found out you were going to be on the show months ago. You must have found the pattern you wanted to do. You must have at least tried to make it once.
Yeah.
Even if you made it out of calico, you must have made it once.
But I wonder if I can't remember, and you'd be able to tell me, people, if they aren't necessarily told what the main focus of the made to measure is, so they're told they have to make a dress with buttons.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah. They won't have been told that, the main focus here is you've got to have 15 pristine buttons. But they knew it was going to be a summer dress with 15 buttons down the front.
Yeah.
absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah, I remember Janet telling us that they never told them the criteria. They just said, this, you've got to make this pattern.
Absolutely.
So which one stood out to you on that round? Because you know, we've now had 2 rounds.
We talked about Damien. I really liked Damien's fabric choice in this.
Lovely.
Really liked it. And actually, I quite liked the look of the dress. It looked nice and comfortable, and if it was a warm day, and he made his own buttons, and I really liked it.
If Damien is watching, I'd quite like that fabric for some curtains. So I've been trying to find something like that, and I was like, I love that fabric to go in my living room with my new sofa. And I haven't been able to find anything that I like yet. And I don't dislike Damien at all. I think the fact that he matched that pattern so precisely. And I quite like I like the shape of the dress. It might have been a little bit baggy on the back, but you know, he was also going for that drape. I mean, they called it a high-low. I mean, it wasn't quite a fishtail, but you know, that high-low hem. Yeah. And I think it worked really well. And I think again, it showed that if he just sorts himself out in that first challenge, he has the potential because he clearly can sew.
Yeah, absolutely. I really liked his. I quite liked actually a few of them. I liked Lorato's for something a bit different. It was a nice wiggle dress. I thought that was quite vintagey, retro.
Yeah, it had the good look, and as you said, Ting, it had the good silhouette, didn't it?
Well, here we go. you put me in a box last week, and I'm out of that box now. So this was a summer dress, and to me, a summer dress was should be at least a little bit floaty. It's something that you might have pulled on, you know, or something that you're going to go down the pub when it's light until 9:30 at night, you know, sitting out in the beer garden and something like that. And I'm not, you know, the Lorato's dress was really well sewn and it was fitted really well, and it was like a wiggle dress, but it was like a wiggle. It wasn't, to me, it lost the summer bit. It needed to be a bit
more flowy. Again,
informal.
That comes down to your personal style. And I think that's something as well, because I know a lot of people, like when I lived in Brighton on a summer's evening, went out in wiggle dresses or whatever, you know, so they would have worn those in the summer because
I think I know what you're saying.
Necessarily wear it with something underneath, so you have that exposure, and you'd only really wear it in summer. So technically,
yeah, I know what you're saying, but then if you looked, apart from hers and Adina's, which again was more fitted, everyone else's had that floaty kind of summery evening-y.
Yeah,
you know, there is a style, you know, like when we said about a buffet dress.
If it comes down to it, because Adina's was quite formal. It was stunning. It was so chic.
You can save Adina's till later if you like.
Yeah, okay.
Because I need to go and find my high horse before I start talking about Adina's.
No, I think I'm going to be with you on there. I'm love-hate relationship with it. Also made me feel a bit sick. It made me feel like I got goggle glasses on. It was like 3D.
I mean, we can go for it now if you like.
No. But what I'm saying is, it's also hasn't got that floaty feel. It wouldn't necessarily be a summer dress. It would be a formal occasion dress. Do you know what I mean? It'd be going to dinner dress. So technically, it wouldn't be a summer dress as well, but it's still a summer dress, if you know what I mean. So it all depends on your style.
Let's focus then on the ones who have led the way so far. So Adam and Serena. So what about Adam's polka dot?
I love the colours. I mean, he does love his red, white and blue. I don't know why that's a thing. Yeah. But I also thought that, you know, same like we've just been talking about, he went for that 40s approach where it was slightly more fitted on the top, but then you still had that lovely floaty skirt. I know he tried to put a bit of net under it, but you know, he still had that floaty nature of kind of skipping down the high street with it flapping out, you know, and that seemed very summery to me.
Yeah, well, again, it's a swing dress, so technically, just going to say it again, not technically a summer dress. It was a beautiful swing dress, though. I really liked this. My bridesmaids at my wedding wore swing dresses. I love that sort of style. He did a really, really good job. It was a wee bit wonky on the top.
I wasn't too sure about the two red bits across. I would have thought just the one. I didn't understand why there were two.
Two red bits across.
Two red lines going across.
That's the way that is. So that's just your middle section.
Yeah,
That's basically a belting or you're wasting, you know.
Oh, I see.
Okay. But no, I liked his, but again, the fit was slightly on the wrong for me. Serena, I just wrote down classic sort of old dress, and it was nice, but it wasn't a great fit, and I wasn't that bothered by it. I have to say, it kind of just, it looked really dated for me, and it looked like, I don't know, it didn't really stand out for me. It was nice and it was well sewn, and but it wasn't a great fit on the bust. It was a bit too big. So maybe if it'd been slightly better fitted, it might have.
That might have been more of a fit problem, yeah.
Yeah, but I wasn't. It was floral and kind of classic and kind of old.
Now, I quite like the look of Rebecca. She comes across as quite quiet, and they don't focus on her much. But for this round, she'd chosen cotton gauze, which I've just now started to stock in the shop. Double gauze fabric, it's like a muslin, isn't it? We thought what you could wrap babies in and have a burp bib or whatever. So I was quite interested to see how she managed with that fabric. She did really well because it's very, very light, very wafty.
Well, you know, if you want a summer dress, I've heard that it's good to have a bit of floaty action going on. Do you know what it is? It's best to have a bit of floaty action going on.
I think you say we didn't get to see a lot of her. I imagine there was probably a lot of swearing going on with that fabric. That's probably why we didn't get to see a lot of her.
So I think she managed that well. What about Raf's lobsters?
I love the fabric. And again, that just shows his ability to choose the colours and the fabric, and it was kind of effectively dip dye ombre sort of effect. There was just a few fitting, and again, we spoke about this last week. He's relatively new to making clothes, and he makes men's clothes, and you know, he trying to curve that and put the darts in around a bust, you know, it's not something he will have done on any of his own. Mates.
And he struggled as well lining up the buttons. His buttons didn't line up as well.
Yeah, I didn't like the buttons. Did you? I thought they you know, a button. I thought they could have been a bit more wow. But to plan that dip dye for the bottom, that's some thinking. He's had to really think about that and pre-prepare.
Mm-hmm. Well, they all were supposed to pre-prepare, Stuart.
Yeah.
Yeah, but he clearly has.
Just nip down to Dunelm and cut a bit off the fabric down there.
So whenever he's got experience working with textiles, so he's probably using that to his advantage and demonstrating his ability with that, which is really good.
I remember my father always, as a kid, taught me these 5 Ps. You can have 6 Ps, but the extra one is a bit of a rude word. Proper planning prevents poor performance, and Raf has clearly been really planning that to get that dip dye, because it was a wonderful effect, wasn't it?
Yes.
Now everyone's wondering what the other P is.
Yeah.
Don't.
Put it in the comments.
Yes, below.
Right. Jean went for a striking fabric, didn't she?
Yes. Beautiful. I wrote nice fabric for her. I liked her fabric as well, but
I mean, she was already on a sticky wicket, and when she was planning this dress, which was probably when she was at home, she will not have known that, you know, the day before she had the worst day of her life. Yeah. But this goes back to what we've said before about this is what you know you're doing. So at some point, you should have practiced whether you could do this. What is it, 4 hours, 5 hours, whatever they've got. Because it had the potential to look stunning. She had the slightly older model, and that would have flattered her body and, you know, her age as well. It wasn't a skimpy little dress, and it had the potential to look stunning. And the top half, well, to be fair, she's got the skirt on, but the hem, I mean, Lord knows what was going on there.
She had no time.
She had miles and miles of hemming to do. It was like, oh my God, woman, how much hemming have you?
Well, and have you thought about how you're going to hem this? No. Nope. Oh, well, because you've got about 3 miles of it. One would have thought you would have thought about it.
Yeah, absolutely. No, it was an absolute shame because, like, there was loads of weight issues. The waist I wrote waist doesn't match. The buttons were nowhere near where they should have been, and the hem was just...
Well, it brings us nicely on. There's not really many other. There's a couple of others there, but we've kind of discussed them.
Well, I was going to say, did you want to talk about Adina before we go much further?
We've got to go on to Adina.
Did you not want to talk about Andrews?
Well, I've not put much about Andrews. I just said black and white, and that was it.
Well, I wrote frumpy.
Yeah.
but then it occurred to me today, especially because I was just quickly flicking through before we came online.
Yeah.
And this will be for the people at our sort of age. Do you remember Pretty Woman when Julia Roberts went back to the shop? Big mistake, huge, and she was wearing this white dress with the black thing and the big. Yeah. It looked like someone had got Julia Roberts and hit her with a shovel, and everything had gone boom, down. And it was just like, oh my God, this is like, what have you done? And again, I think it was because it was more fitted and didn't seem summery. It looked like...
I actually wrote down, I kind of liked the style of it, but then I love.
Oh my God!
I actually kind of like no. So I like when something goes full retro, where you go to like a proper tea dress, or you go for a swing dress, or you go for that wiggle dress.
Yeah.
I don't like, for example, Serena's, where it's kind of hazy and it's a bit just.
Yes, right.
Like he went for the full retro and had like the whole outfit. I was like, well, that's actually pretty well done. When you
like the other. Well, the
other
like
the Ascot Gavotte in My Fair Lady, wasn't it? But
well, no, it wasn't that stylish. Come on. The other person who it brought to mind was Mrs. Bouquet.
Yes. Yeah. Well, there we are. Let us know your comments.
Like, you could see her coming out, Richard.
Yeah.
You know.
It was seriously.
You just needed buttons down the front.
Yeah, I think I appreciated the fact that he went all in. You know what I mean? Yeah. So he went all in on it rather than.
Yeah, he had the shoes and the hat and everything to need to.
Yeah, it went full in. It was like, oh, fair play. Do you know what I mean? So I appreciated the effort in that. I like that.
It leaves us with Adina, who, let's say, she got Garment of the Week for it. So go on.
I absolutely loved it. I just thought it was so chic. I could see somebody like Audrey Hepburn in that, where it was just so clean and just very, very stylish.
Okay, Ting?
I hated it.
What did you hate about it? What is it that it was? So
let me put my disclaimer in. Okay, she drafted the pattern herself. Extremely difficult. Mm-hmm. She had decided to do concealed hems like last week, so everything had to be bagged out. Extremely difficult. The actual sewing of the dress and the pattern and it all coming together, absolutely fabulously well done. You cannot falter on what she's done, okay? Mm-hmm. But hated that fabric. I actually thought I was having a stroke. I thought my eyes had gone because I thought, hang on, there's something wrong.
I put on the wrong glasses.
It sort of phased on the television.
And then going back to my previous point, I felt it was too fitted. And then when that top came down, and I get what she was trying to do, and I can't fault her on her skills and her sewing ability, but that it seemed too formal with it up, and it seemed semi-formal with it down. It didn't seem relaxed, summery, you know, and then it went boom right down to the floor as well. And it was just, I hated it. I'm sorry. I can't fault her on what she's done.
Yeah,
but I hated
what it comes down to every time, though, is personal interpretation of what the challenge is and what it is. For me, perfect summer dress, same as a wiggle dress, same as a swing dress. They're all and like the tea dress, they're all summery dresses. As a woman, happy to wear any of those. I wouldn't wear Adina's dress in winter. I wouldn't wear it in autumn.
Well, you wouldn't wear any of them in winter, but to me,
but what I mean is technically they're all
too blocky and too much for a. I just think, you know, if you were saying make a dress, fine, but I think a summery dress, I just feel it should have a bit more movement than those fitted ones and Adina's.
It's those connotations of, as you say, what comes with summer and what you would wear, as you say. It'll be interesting to see what people say in the comments, whether a lot of the ladies will be agreeing with Anya.
If you think of the style of like Audrey Hepburn in like the old films, like, you know, it's all those beautiful classic lines.
Yes,
and beautiful boxiness and lovely and clean. That for me, they were summer films, and you know, she had a mix of different types of dresses. And some of them were straight up and down, and that was the style of them. So
I think the way I look at it, though, because this is a competition and they've been told, you know, this week they're making a summer dress. Yeah. The way I kind of think of it is if you went into your haberdashery shop to find your pattern for the show and you had Adam's pattern slightly fitted with it came out, you had Damien's pattern with the up and down hem, more floaty, even Raf's pattern, although he didn't, you know, with the strappy top, and then you had Adina's pattern, and even the Ratu, you know, the fitted one. If I said to you, you can choose one of those for a summer dress, most people, I think, would go for that float, you know, the idea of a summer dress. If you could choose one of those patterns, I appreciate you might want to take them all home and say, I'm going to make them all at some point. But if you were doing it for a competition and I had those laid out in front of me, I would have gone for something like Adam's or Raf's, you know, something with a bit more float.
Clearly, a lot of people did interpret it that way. And that's why most of the show had very similar swishy, floaty dresses. Mm. But then you also had 3 or 4 who went the other way. So again, it's going to be personal bias. Whatever your experience is in life, and you've went, oh, I really like that in summer.
And when those judges were judging it, maybe that self-drafted pattern idea came into it, and the idea that the buttons were off, you know.
Yeah, she was the only one that did off-center buttons.
So
and
originality, flair.
Yeah. And there is an argument that you have to stand out, you have to do originality, but if you've got all of your buttons going smack down the centre and you've got them all exactly straight with each other, I would argue that that is more difficult than off-centering your buttons.
I don't think they said it was more difficult. It was just the fact that she had put them down the side, so she was the only one done it off-center, and her buttons were beautifully aligned down the side. And that is actually going to be, well, it's going to be hard whichever way, because you've got curves to deal with either way, but you've also got, even though it's a straight up and down, you still have got that curve to deal with. You have to get that down the side, and you don't want gift, you know what I mean? So you still have similar issues.
One thing I do find with this program compared to Bake Off, actually, I think there's more pressure on Bake Off for them to always do something original and creative. Actually, here, I don't ever get that impression, or that the sewers are under that pressure to be original. Which must be nice, actually.
Well, I think it's because most sewers will go and have a pattern, and they are commercially available patterns, and, you know, a wiggle dress is a wiggle dress, you know, and so on, you know, so it does have a certain look to it. In the history, I mean, in the first couple of series of the Sewing Bee, there were a couple of people. I remember there was the one lady, and I cannot remember her name because I think it was in the first or the second series, and she would literally throw the fabric down on the floor, and get down with tailor's chalk and literally just draw it by hand, cut it out, and miraculously it would fit.
Wow.
And you know, I think she actually did go on to win, but. And I think, you know, if you've got that skill, that, you know, that is a separate skill in itself. It's a bit like those challenges in the middle. You know, you've got that eye and able to see things without worrying with a pattern. But most people, you know, even when you first start sewing, the first thing you'll do is go and find an easy pattern that you'll cut out and use. So you get so used to using patterns that unless you're really daring, or you are perhaps a textile student, or you have got that artistic flair, you're not going to start drafting your own patterns because you'll be worried you're going to cock it up.
Yeah, and that's the thing. I think that lady, I remember her myself, actually. She's a rare breed. I think that's, you know, that it was a rarity. The only way people introduce their flair now is with the likes of Damien and his buttons, or that contrasting thread, or, you know, choice of fabric.
We have had people, I mean, you know, a couple of years ago, Ricardo, he would design his own bits and pieces as well. Yeah. You know, so there's normally 1 or 2 people who, in the Sewing Bee, who have that skill. And I think the other thing, you know, you were comparing it to the Bake Off. It's easier to go out and buy 6 more eggs and another bag of flour. It's cheaper to do that than it is to go out and buy another 6 meters of fabric. You know, at the end of the day, if your cake goes wrong, it goes in the bin. Whereas if you've bought 6 meters of fabric, you know, that is a lot of money.
I do not store for the cake.
We'll bring it to a close then. Do we have any more movements on your your ones to watch, or the ones that you're beginning to now, oh, I think I like them, I want to follow them for the next 9 weeks?
I don't know. Go ahead. Go, Ting, go.
Well, no, I've already said that I think, you know, Raf is one to watch. I think it'll be interesting next week because they're doing menswear and all of the male sewers. You know, this should be something that they maybe, well, I mean, it won't be because they'll have chosen something absolutely ridiculous for them to make. But, you know, at least they'll be used to working with male proportions, and it might throw some of the female sewers. And it's quite nice because I think over the last couple of years, they haven't always put a male one in, or the male sewers have been long gone before they've put something in. But yeah, I mean, Raf has there for me in terms of perhaps the male. The female sewers, I'm still, I mean, like the two young girls, they've got something there, but I wonder if they're too young and they haven't got enough experience.
That's it. I think they're going to be kind of almost like a safe bet where they'll just keep on. I don't think they're going to be like that. I don't know, but at the minute they seem safe. I think I'm interested to see after seeing what Adina has done. I think it'd be interesting because even in her transformation,
she's got something. Yeah,
she had like nice clashing with the transformation challenge, and she sort of tested the boundaries a wee bit there. And like her shorts were grand, her pockets were the wrong way around and stuff. But
I know we've had her on the show, but we haven't got a Janet this year. You know, like you tend to have like that older, slightly more experienced, has been sewing for grandchildren and children and everything like that. We haven't really got that. And I don't know if that's an upshot of COVID and people haven't applied because they didn't know if they were going to be vaccinated and blah, 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 blah. But sometimes, you know, I would often support, you know, I love Janet and a couple of those because you can appreciate the experience that they bring and the abilities that they have. And I don't think we've got anyone like that. I thought maybe that Jean and Catherine were going to do that, but Jean's, well, she's gone now, but she was also slightly off the wall. But I don't know with Catherine, I don't think she's an avid, so I think, you know, it's been something that she's done a little bit as she goes along, or that's the impression I get.
Yeah. I don't know, I think she has potential. Like her dress would have been great if she'd not focused on the pattern matching. You know, the finished dress I think would have been interesting. So it'll be interesting. I think there's too many people in at the minute to be able to have anybody come out and be like, ta-da! You know, there hasn't been any, like, I loved Adina's dress. You didn't, but that's okay. But I really, like, for me, that it was like, yeah, that's definitely garment of the week. It's beautiful.
I think, you know, like you say, we haven't had that ta-da moment, but there's no reason why we shouldn't have had it. You know, someone should have come out, you know, if there was going to be that one where you're like, oh my God, I can't wait to see what they're going to do week on week. We haven't had that moment yet. And there's no reason why it shouldn't have been there. You could have had an absolutely stunning summer dress this week. You could have had an absolutely stunning buffet dress last week. But we didn't have anything that was like jaw-droppingly.
No.
But I might challenge you on that because I don't know whether we have had it.
Raf's was good last week. Yeah, I will give him that. Yeah.
I don't know whether we have had it, but in a completely different guise, and that's in Damien. He's the one that's made us go,
oh, you're just saying that because you want him to win now.
Is he a winger? Is he winging it? No.
He's winging it.
He messed it up on there, and then he makes that brilliant dress, the buffet dress last week with eyelets in. I think he's a hustler. I think he knows more.
You just want to see. You're hoping.
He's going to go.
The thing with Damien is he's done. This is the point I've been making. You know, not just today, but in the previous series and that as well. He's practiced.
Yeah.
He has practiced that final challenge. Yeah. Which is what everyone should be doing. Yeah. And he's practiced that. In the first challenge, where they're given the pattern and he's not had a chance to read it, he's completely off the rails.
Yeah. It'll be interesting though, because he's made garments for his other half, hasn't he?
Yes. So he's not making them for himself.
He's bound to at some point come across a pattern that's going to be very similar to what he's made before, and he'll be grand. So It's going to be interesting.
I genuinely think he is doing what we always say that they should be doing. He is practicing. He practiced that dress, so he knew how to line up all that pattern. He knew he had to make those coconut buttons. He knew he had to do that because he practiced it. And I just got the feeling, you know, with poor old Jean, you haven't practiced it. You didn't realise you had 3 miles of hem that needed to be done. With the others, I know they had problems with their buffet dresses, but you should have practiced it. You should have known it might needed lining. You should have known that you had too many ruffles. And Damien has practiced. He's done what they should have all done.
So what you're saying is you agree with Stuart?
I'm not saying that I agree that it goes away, because I think he will continue to mess up in that pattern challenge because he will not slow down enough to do something he is unfamiliar with.
It will be very interesting next week then to see the men's stuff. Oh, always.
He might struggle because he only makes stuff for he doesn't make stuff for himself.
Good point.
I thought he does do stuff for himself, or am I making that up? He was talking about the fact that he was doing woodwork, but it's not something he could wear. So.
Well, it's been a great chat. That's take that little discussion there. Just took us over 50 minutes, but it's good to have that discussion. Getting lovely comments already. People loving watching it. People are
and it's lovely to see people coming back and having the chats again from last time. So it's really nice.
Seeing some familiar names there as well, and a lot of new people too. So a great episode, great chatting. And so it's next week then with, what was the actual topic? Just menswear?
It looked like they were going to end up making a jacket, I think.
Right. Well, hopefully we'll see you all then, won't we?
Yes.
Like and do all your magical things that you do.
Subscribe. Was it like and subscribe and smash the like button and something else?
Do the little bell and whatever.
And we will see you next week. Bye, everyone.
Bye.